All right, guys. So a couple of days ago, the Israeli outlet Haaretz came out with a new report detailing what we've been covering for a month now, the daily massacres that are happening at these so-called aid sites that the U.S. set up inside of Gaza. So their headline here is, "It's a killing field. IDF soldiers ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid." So they start off here saying, Israeli soldiers in Gaza told Haaretz that the army has deliberately fired at Palestinians near aid distribution sites over the past month. Conversations with officers and soldiers revealed that commanders ordered troops to shoot at crowds to drive them away or disperse them, even though it was clear they posed no threat. Again, keep in mind, we've been talking about this over and over again. It's basically been every single day since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, as it's being called, was set up. These massacres have been happening day after day after day. Hundreds of people have been killed, thousands have been wounded, and every single time that this happens, from the US government, from the Israeli government, we either get silence or we get deny, 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 or we get trying to pin the blame on Hamas. But here you have IDF soldiers not only admitting that they're the ones doing these massacres, but that their commanders are ordering them to do it as a standard part of their military procedure around these, again, so-called aid sites. They continue. They say, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, 549 people have been killed. 549 just since May in and around these aid sites. Over 4,000 have been wounded, but the exact number, again, is unclear given these circumstances. They continue. They say, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, aid centers began operating in the Strip at the end of May. The circumstances of the foundation's establishment and its funding are murky, but it is known to have been set up by Israel in coordination with U.S. evangelicals and private security contractors. Its current CEO is an evangelical leader who's close to both Donald Trump and to Benjamin Netanyahu. They continue. Contrary to the foundation's initial promises, distribution is chaotic, which is the purpose. It's intentionally chaotic, with crowds rushing the piles of boxes. Since the rapid distribution centers opened, Haaretz has counted 19 shootings near them. While the shooters' identities are not always clear, the IDF does not permit armed individuals in these humanitarian zones without its knowledge. So in other words, it's the IDF or the GHF that's engaging in these shootings. In all likelihood, the IDF. There isn't even a different plausible source that you could come up with for who's engaging in these massacres. It's very clearly the IDF. And keep in mind, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF, this is not a humanitarian organization. This is a mercenary group that is working in coordination with both the IDF and the US government, obviously, to carry out Israel's plan for the future of Gaza. And they've made this very clear. They're not hiding it. It's the Trump plan, as the Israelis have called it, to essentially use these aid distribution sites and starvation as a weapon of war to push the population southward towards the south of Gaza near Rafah, and then to eventually expel the entire population in a mass ethnic cleansing. That's what their plan is, and these aid sites, again, are not really aid sites. They're either, as they put it here, killing fields, or they're part of that broader strategy to use hunger to drive the population out of Gaza in a mass ethnic cleansing. That's the purpose of the GHF, as well as to try to protect Israel's legitimacy on the international stage, to say, look, we're not starving the population, we're giving them this aid, aren't we so generous, right? So those are the main functions as to what these aid sites really are. They're not humanitarian, sites for people to actually be fed and to get the aid that they need. They continue, though. They say the distribution sites typically open for just 1 hour each morning. According to officers and soldiers who served in the areas, the IDF fires at people who arrive before opening hours to prevent them from approaching, or again, after these centers close, to disperse them. Since some of the shooting incidents occurred at night ahead of the opening, it's possible that some civilians couldn't even see the boundaries of the designated area. Again, does this sound like how a humanitarian organization should operate, where you're firing directly at crowds of hungry people, unarmed civilians, as a means of crowd control, as a means to tell them, oh, we're closing, let me just fire some shots into the crowd here? I mean, it's utterly deranged. They continue. They say, it's a killing field, one soldier said. Where I was stationed, between 1 and 5 people were killed every day. They're treated like a hostile force. No crowd control measures, no tear gas, just live fire with everything imaginable. Heavy machine guns, grenade launchers, mortars. Then, once the center opens, the shooting stops, and they know that they can approach. Our form of communication is gunfire. The soldier went on. We open fire early in the morning if someone tries to get in line from a few hundred meters away, and sometimes we just charge at them from close range, but there's no danger to the forces. According to him, I'm not aware of a single instance of return fire. There's no enemy, no weapons. He also said the activity in his area of service is referred to as Operation Salted Fish, the name of the Israeli version of the children's game Red Light, Green Light. They are gamifying genocide, literally. And as he points out there, you can't even try to make the claim, as some Israeli officials like Netanyahu have before, that, oh, well, there's a threat to the force, right? They were approaching us suspiciously. We had to fire in self-defense. No, he's saying they're completely unarmed. We know that they're unarmed, and we're still doing it. We're using tank fire, heavy machine guns, mortars, grenade launchers, just mass slaughter in a gamified way every single day. They continue. They say IDF officers told Haaretz that the army does not allow the public in Israel or abroad to see footage of what takes place around the food distribution sites. And according to them, the army is satisfied that the GHF's operations have prevented a total collapse of international legitimacy for continuing the war. And again, that's one of the key points as to why the GHF was set up in the first place. Before that, keep in mind, it was months and months and months of Israel just completely cutting off all humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza. Complete and total shut off. No food, no water, no medicine, nothing. And there was a sustained pushback to that around the world, both from average people, but also even some top Israeli allied countries were starting to get a little bit uneasy about the idea of just mass starving 2 million people to death. And so there was a little bit of international pressure that was built up. Clearly, Israel felt that, and they came up with this plan with the United States to use this fake aid distribution killing field as basically a deflection to say, look, we're not starving the population. We're so generous. We're providing food to them for free, right? So that's a huge part of this. And, obviously it's important to accurately characterize what these so-called aid sites really are so that Israel cannot use that as some sort of a bullshit deflection, right? We finish off here. They say, Gaza doesn't interest anyone anymore, said a reservist who completed another round of duty in the northern Gaza Strip this week. He says, it's become a place with its own set of rules. The loss of human life means nothing. It's not even an unfortunate incident, like they used to say. And unfortunately, to some extent, he's kind of right about this. I mean, how much coverage in the U.S. mainstream media is being put towards the fact that we have IDF soldiers who are openly admitting that they are massacring unarmed civilians on a daily basis, by the dozens, by the hundreds? How much mainstream media coverage is that going to get here in the United States? I've seen more media coverage on bullshit accusations, smears of Zoran Mamdani, the guy who just won the New York City Democratic primary for the mayorship. I've seen more coverage of smears against him for being anti-Semitic, which he's not, because he's critical of Israel. Meanwhile, this is what he's criticizing. And this doesn't get a lick of coverage here in the United States. And when it is covered, it's in Israel's favor. I'll show you a couple of those here in a minute. We also have here, again from Haaretz, the response from the Netanyahu government. Blood libels. Netanyahu and Israel Katz reject Haaretz expose on IDF intentionally shooting Gazans at aid centers. Blood libels. The IDF soldiers are blood libeling themselves. That's the point that we're at right now in terms of Israeli Hasbara, in terms of their attempts to defend themselves. They're not even trying, guys. They're literally not even trying. It's blood libel for your own soldiers to admit that they're killing civilians. That's blood libel. They have completely removed any meaning from phrases like that. Again, in terms of Western media coverage here from Asal Rod, little compilation here. How do they cover it? Well, they cover it from Netanyahu's position. Benjamin Netanyahu denounces report that Israeli soldiers have orders to shoot Palestinians. Netanyahu rejects report. Israeli military rejects report. Netanyahu denounces report. This is what we get here in the United States. I mean, to some extent, you can make the case that there are Israeli outlets who are much more honest and much more critical of the Israeli government than Western mainstream outlets are. I mean, you wouldn't see a piece like this in these outlets over here. Now, we also have here, this is just a phenomenal video, disturbing, but phenomenal, where we have, as pointed out here by Max Blumenthal, one of the Israel lobby's most reliable propaganda assets, Richard Kemp, who is sent to whitewash one of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's concentration camps. And just as he's done praising the dystopian program, about 45 seconds in here, you can hear gunshots go off in the background. I mean, this is just unreal. Let's go ahead and listen to this. I'll skip a little bit ahead here.
In order to discredit the GHF, the Hamas hate the GHF because the GHF delivers aid directly into the hands of the Gazan people without being seized by Hamas and sold at a profit. Very many of the people behind me here have told me it's the first time they've ever received free aid. So don't believe the propaganda that's been churned out by Hamas and amplified by too much of the international and national media.
So this is a 45-second video. I mean, it's pretty clear you can hear gunshots in the background here. I'm assuming either he did this in one take and just didn't care that there were gunshots in the background, or he couldn't even find a 45-second plus window here to record the video without gunshots being in the background. And this was like the best that they could come up with. I mean, this is where we're at, guys. Recording a video, bragging about how safe and amazing these aid sites are, and then you hear gunshots go off in the background of his own video. He posted this. This wasn't leaked. He was proud of this. He posted this. And you also heard him say there, you know, this is necessary because Hamas was looting all of the aid. Of course, we've covered the the reality of that situation. We've had numerous reports at this point of the IDF working in coordination with ISIS-affiliated gangs inside of Gaza to loot the aid. That's been trickling in at a snail's pace, but we don't need to rehash all of that obvious propaganda here from Richard Kemp. He also brags in this post, thousands of Gazans collecting the free aid that they need, almost 50 million meals delivered in the last month, and now 2 million a day. 2 million a day. First off, assuming that number is accurate, which we don't have any evidence for, and assuming that it's evenly distributed amongst the entire population, which it's not, and assuming that the aid is actually useful, we've seen in multiple instances that it's not, it's, you know, things that Palestinians in Gaza don't have the equipment to cook for, etc. But even assuming all of those things are true, and that it's the perfect number here that we have, you're still talking about 1 meal per day. 1 meal per day that is possibly, hypothetically, in his ideal world, getting to people in Gaza. I mean, it's insane. Now, to give you guys a perspective of what it actually looks like as Palestinians are trying to get to these aid sites, here's just a short compilation video from Eye on Palestine over on Instagram that did a mashup here of what it looks like as you're trying to desperately seek a little bit of food for that day. I mean, as that soldier in the initial Haaretz piece was saying, it really is like a game of red light, green light, where, you know, the shooting starts, you got to duck behind cover, you got to try to lay down in the dirt so that you're not one of the dozens of people who's killed that day. And then once the shooting stops, or I guess they have to reload for a little bit, then you try to make a run for it. I mean, this is the most disturbing, you know, footage that I've seen in a very long time. You have thousands of people who are being shot at with live ammunition. These are people who are hungry. These are people who are starving. You know, some of them probably haven't eaten in days, if that. And you know, they're being gamified here. This is what genocide looks like. Now, of course, none of this is new. You know, it's helpful to have reports like that from Haaretz. It's helpful to have the direct testimony from IDF soldiers who are on the ground committing the war crimes themselves. But none of this is new. This has been the standard practice for the Israeli military the entire time that they've been inside of Gaza. So, I mean, just as a reminder, this is a report that I covered last year, almost an entire year ago now. Back in July of 2024, the headline here from 972 magazine was, "I'm bored, so I shoot. The Israeli army's approval of free-for-all violence in Gaza." Israeli soldiers described the near-total absence of firing regulations in the Gaza war, with troops shooting as they please, setting homes ablaze, and leaving corpses on the street, all with their commanders' permission. So the reporting on this from, great outlets like 972 magazine has been consistent from the start. Right. So the notion that the Israeli military is shooting at unarmed Palestinians at aid sites is the least surprising thing that I've ever read in my entire life. Doesn't make it any less shocking or disturbing, but unfortunately, that is the baseline for how the IDF operates. This is what our government is supporting, guys. We also had this report from Haaretz that came out a few days ago, where they estimate that there are actually 100,000 that have been killed inside of Gaza. Now, you can see here on the right the list that was put out by the most recent list that was put out by the Gaza Health Ministry. They put these out regularly, and essentially it shows who the person is, if they can be identified, their name, the age that they were when they were killed. And this list is shocking just to look at the ages of how many people, how many children have been killed. And this is the official roll. This is people who we know their birthday, we know their name, we know, where they were killed, how they were killed. So obviously this doesn't encompass the entirety of the people who have been killed inside of Gaza. In fact, it probably doesn't even come close to the entirety of it, because their current role that they have is still roughly at around like 50, 55, 60,000 at this point. And as Haaretz is pointing out here, the real death toll, in all likelihood, I've seen estimates from, 100,000 to 400,000. I mean, we don't know, and we won't know probably for some time. But the idea that the 55,000 some odd number is accurate, or that it should be discredited because it's an overcount or something from Hamas, the opposite of that is true. The real death toll has to be tens of thousands higher, because the report that comes out from the Gaza Health Ministry is just people that they know, right? It's people who have been, brought to hospitals that are barely functioning, if they're functioning at all, inside of Gaza. So this doesn't count the amount of people who are trapped under the rubble, the amount of people who have been, struck so significantly that they're not even recognizable, or that nobody has ever found them, or entire families that are wiped out, so that nobody's even there to claim that somebody's missing. Like the real death toll is, in all likelihood, I would say 100,000 is probably in and of itself a gross underestimation, which is, disturbing to say the least. They pointed out here in this article that this compilation that was recently put out by the health ministry notes the precise age of children who were under the age of 1 year when they were killed. Mahmoud al-Maranak and 7 more children died on the same day they were born. 8 children died on the same day that they were born. 4 more children were killed on the day after they entered the world. 5 others lived to the age of 2 days. Not until page 11, following 486 names, does the name appear of the first child who was more than 6 months old when he was killed. You have 11 pages of the names of children who were under the age of 6 months old when they were killed, where their entire existence on this planet was during this genocide. I mean, to say it's bleak is the understatement of the century. Finishing off here, we have further indications that the death toll is likely way higher than is being suggested. We have, I'll put this on mute, but you can read the captions down there. The Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, using the 1.8 million reference point for the population of Gaza. Keep in mind, pre-war, it was somewhere between 2.1, 2.2 million. And he's not the only one who said this. I believe I've also heard this from Donald Trump as well, using 1.8 million to refer to the population of Gaza. I'm not sure why you would do this if you didn't know something that maybe we don't know. I don't know why you would drastically and intentionally underestimate the population in Gaza, but this might be, a not so subtle admission here that the actual death toll is likely significantly higher than what we're being told. And I'll leave you guys off with this. I mean, obviously the polling not looking good for Israel in terms of sort of making themselves into a pariah state around the world. It unfortunately hasn't caught up to the governments around the world who continue to support Israel, the United States and Europe as well, although we have seen a little bit more pushback from some European countries. But there is a disconnect here between the ironclad support that Israel gets from the United States and many of our sort of allies in Europe versus what the people actually believe, right? I mean, this is just Democrats, but you can track it over time. In the Middle East situation, are your sympathies more with the Israelis or more with Palestinians? You can see it all the way back here, starting in like the early 2000s. It was over 50%. Maybe it dipped down a little bit to 40, but it never dropped below 40% for the last 25 years, essentially, until right now. And now it's all the way down at 21% in terms of siding with the Israelis. 60% siding with Palestinians. So, I mean, listen, guys, I wish that this kind of polling meant something in this country, right? The distribution within our government, within Congress, certainly within the presidency, of Israel supporters to Israel critics is what, 99-1? I mean, it's not even remotely close to representative of the American people, right? This is just a graph of Democrats, but even amongst all Americans, support for Israel has dropped to historic lows, right? Even amongst independents, even amongst Republicans, it's dropping to historic lows. And that's not just because of the moral angle to all of this, right? Which obviously should be a primary factor in this, the fact that we are supporting, arming, and funding a genocide. But it's not just that. It's also the fact that Israel is supposedly, at least is preached to us as a top ally, right? They're our closest ally. They're essentially treated like a 51st state in this country. We got fucking members of Congress showing up wearing an IDF uniform to Congress. So we're told that, and then you see how Israel acts, right? You see them not only tarnishing the U.S. reputation around the world, destroying the concept, the notion of international law, of human rights, that's something that matters. But they're also costing us in terms of just purely from a national security perspective. Like, Israel is not benefiting the United States at all. If anything, they're costing us. We almost just went to a full-blown war, and we still could, by the way, with Iran on Israel's behalf when we were in the middle of negotiations for an Iran nuclear deal, a peaceful diplomatic solution. And Israel decides to bomb Iran with a green light from the U.S., to be fair. But like, these are the incentives with the U.S.-Israeli relationship. How many wars do we need to fight on Israel's behalf, right? How many Americans need to die for Israel? I mean, to say it's an unhealthy relationship would be a severe understatement. Israel is probably the worst ally of any country that has ever existed. So I'll leave you guys off with that. Not shocked by the polling here, but 21%. Even from their own self-interested perspective, you would think at some point, you got to wrap it up, because believe it or not, people are not too happy to see 2 years straight of endless child killing on their timelines. Believe it or not, that doesn't make people like you. So I'll leave you guys off with that. Again, shocking report, unfortunately, not surprising.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying